Welcome to Make Possible Bitesize, a weekly podcast brought to you by Permutive, championing change in publishing, advertising, and beyond. Each episode, we chat to an inspiring guest about their careers, their lives, and how they're making change possible. Let's bite right in.
Hello, everyone, and welcome. My name is Christy Schaefer. I'm the VP Americas at Permutive. For today's Biteside episode, I am very delighted to welcome Jason Kint, CEO at Digital Content Next. Hi, Jason. Welcome.
Hi.
How are you?
Great. Thanks for having me, Christy. Good to see you.
Absolutely. You as well. Well, thank you for joining for this episode. For the audience that doesn't quite know you yet, can you briefly introduce yourself, your role, and DCN and what it is?
Absolutely. Thank you again. So DCN, we call ourselves the only association that's exclusively focused on the content companies. So we're made up of about 70 or so digital content businesses creating high quality news and entertainment. We like to call it trusted news and entertainment. And we're exclusively focused on the future. So we've kind of brought together the newspapers, television, magazines, and the pure play digital companies into the same house to think about, what's next for the creation of quality news and entertainment. So our members include everyone from the New York Times to Disney and NBC Universal to Vox Media and NPR. Those are just a few examples. And we're thinking about the entire business, advertising, subscriptions, where things are going and trying to shape the future.
Absolutely. And I've had the privilege of joining 2 or 3 of your conferences, and they've been really valuable, and know your team as a whole is really well trusted in the market and a trusted resource for all of these organizations that you mentioned. So wonderful to have you here.
Excellent. Thanks again for having me. So, and we always appreciate the intelligence of the industry at those events. We do proprietary research, we do advocacy and policy work, but we also do a lot of events where we bring people together inside of a kind of a closed door atmosphere to kind of talk about what's working, what's not working, how can we learn from our mistakes and shape the future. So we've always had a lot of smart people from around the industry at those events, and we appreciate that you were there. So thanks.
Absolutely. Well, let's kick off with our first Make Possible question. It's a tricky one. What are you most proud of that you have achieved in your career so far?
Wow. So I just a little bit of background on me, just so the audience aware. I spent about 20 or so years on the media side of the business with a couple stops. And so for our members, I actually did that role going back to early 90s with the first web browser, actually. And so I have a lot of memories, and I have a great fortune working on a lot of really cool products that, in the last 7 years were with CBS, even like streaming the first Super Bowl, things like that. So really big products that were a lot of fun to play with and be a part of. Most proud though, I think was, I had the good fortune of, because of timing and the web being so new, you think 1994, 95, I was, a 20 something year old kid just coming out of college. And I had the opportunity to grow teams of employees that were much more experienced than me, frankly, and be a part of a lot of growth organizations and new transformations that I'm kind of proud that I was always able to kind of take the long-term view and not get caught up in the short-term opportunities and successes, and kind of keep my head straight and learn from the people around me, especially on the organizational and management side, because I was quite naive. I was in my early 20s, and so not knowing what I didn't know, and being able to do that as a 20-year-old kid, I think was probably something that helped along the way. I'm sure I made mistakes, and some people will say, well, you messed up here, you messed up there, but I had a lot of really smart people around me and experienced people that taught me a lot. And so anyway, I kept going forward and learned a lot over those 20 years.
Yeah, great. And we all make mistakes in our careers, even as we grow older and more experienced. But it's interesting how, being, if you're focusing on that early stage of your career, being younger, and how did you keep that long-term focus, and what are some tactics that you took, maybe 1 or 2 tactics that you think might be valuable for someone who might be early in their career listening to to tack on to?
Um, I think a couple things that I can hear mentors around me saying that kind of stuck with me would be, candor and just speaking the truth in a respectful way. So if you didn't
Mm,
understand something, it's okay to say that. And or if you think that the organization or a group's not doing something right, in a respectful way, explain why you don't think it's right. Because if you don't just kind of directly speak the truth, especially in a world that's changing as quickly as the digital world, then you kind of waste a lot of time and energy. And so I guess that's one. The other one is it's not about me. It's not about Jason Kint and if I kind of just put the organization and what we were trying to do as a group forward first, that normally things in the end worked out for me too and the whole team. And so there was always new opportunities that surfaced, maybe not always as quickly as I hoped, but they always surfaced. And just kind of staying focused on what the group is trying to do and being respectful of all the other views around me. Yeah.
absolutely. Well, those are great tips. Thank you for sharing that. And if we fast forward to today, there's a lot happening in our industry, and I'd be curious to hear, what is your focus for this year?
Mm.
What is the driving force behind what you're doing, and where do you see that taking you over the year ahead?
Yeah. So, it's a very fluid year still for sure. Right. And so we've taken an entire organization that's all about getting our members together in person to learn from each other. And we've taken it virtual and really found our values still being the ability to bring people together quickly, solve problems, share information, learn from each other, just doing it virtually. And so 2021 is definitely about getting back to being able to at least be ready in 2022 to be able to get together in person again. Our issues as an organization are really coming to a head on stuff we've been talking about for 6 or 7 years, and that's all been about direct, trusted relationship with consumers, users, advertisers. And so the massive sea change happening in privacy and data protection, and both from a technology perspective and also from a regulatory perspective, is all kind of coming to a head. And so that's very interesting. New revenue models around video and subscription and membership and non-advertising pieces of the business are all really growing nicely, and so that's
Mhm.
exciting to see. We've been as a group very focused on shining a light on issues that were eroding trust over the years, including kind of the marketplace, unhealthy aspects of the marketplace. And so that's all really gone full steam in the last 6 months, including with a lot of antitrust lawsuits, et cetera, that we've been involved in. So there's a lot all
Mhm.
kind of coming together. And I look back on last year, and the news organizations, which to me are, you know, we have a lot of entertainment companies in our membership, but the news is kind of the soul of consumer trust and what we do. They're coming off a year where they were covering really what I've described as kind of the three biggest, I think, issues of our generation with the pandemic, for one, the social justice movement and Black Lives Matter movement, which is both covering it, but also internal reflection that they need to change as organizations, and then the political discussion and the election and covering that to inform the public rightly and fairly has been those three things are quite something on their own, each of them all coming together at the same time, and it feels like all three of those are still should be front and center, particularly the social justice piece and how media companies need to transform. And so we're doing a bunch of new things there too this year.
That's fantastic to hear. Do you see? I guess when you look at privacy and rights holistically, there's a lot of tie-in together and a lot of importance when it comes to news media, what they're printing and how they're saying, and removing any bias that they may or may not be aware of. Do you see a lot more lean in today from your organizations who may previously, as you mentioned, 6, 7 years ago, you started talking about these topics, but you've seen a lot more lean in, particularly on the privacy front now that regulation is a little bit more clear, platform stances is a little bit more clear. you seeing more action around strategy being taken, or do you think there's still like, well, I'll change when I have to?
It's a mix. I'll be honest with you. It's a mix. A number of organizations are proactive and leaning in. The one challenge is that, from a short-term perspective, leaning in sometimes creates risk. And
Mm-hmm.
so I think that's the challenge, is the bar has to be raised equally on
Mm-hmm.
everyone. And if one company leans forward and says, we're not going to do this practice because we think it's erodes trust in terms of the way we collect data, then it's probably just a short-term revenue hit for them, possibly. And so they need the whole industry to move, either because of regulation or because of a technology change or a consumer sentiment that's just so clear.
Mm-hmm.
And so that it's happening. And so and it's certainly it's the opportunity and where things are going. So the long-term strategic focused companies are definitely, I think, leaning in hard,
Yeah.
and that's refreshing to see.
It is very refreshing. Well, let's move on to our last question here. Um, as far as looking across your career and even outside of work, what has been your guiding light or philosophy in making things possible?
Hmm. Um, Beyond this what I mentioned earlier, I think this speaking the truth and looking at how the broader impact is rather than just the personal impact. I would just say that embracing the change, certainly. I think the disruption that created opportunity for me early on in my career, which was this whole idea of everything moving to the web and the web browser. You know, you could go 10 years forward and that same disruption happened with social media and then mobile, and where any of that advantage that I probably had in my 20s became almost a disadvantage to me because the world was moving quickly. And so there's always something around the corner that is going to disrupt, and the key thing is understanding what's the next level value that really matters. And so that's why, as an organization, we're not focused on specific platforms or business models, and we think about brands and direct trust with consumers and advertisers. I know without a doubt that a brand as a proxy for trust is going to matter long term.
Mm-hmm.
That the HBO brand is going to be meaningful. That this is good entertainment that you're about to watch, or the Washington Post, that you're going to get informed of the facts as close as they can get to the facts. And so long term, that is a underpinning value that's not going to change, not go away. And so to find out what those things are and stick to them as an organization, and I think that probably applies individually too, right? And so what
Mm-hmm.
are those core values that you want and learn from them? So
Yeah, well, that sounds like a good methodology and thought process. So thank you for sharing. And this is a great time just to end our session for today. Thank you, Jason, for joining, and thank you for sharing some thoughts about DCN and where the organization is headed as well. Um, Thank you again.
thank you for having me. Good to see you, Christy. Thanks.
Amazing. Well, lastly, just want to thank everyone that's tuned in today, the listeners, viewers that have joined our Make Possible Bitesize. Next week, we will be speaking to another inspiring guest about what they do to champion change. See you then, and thanks, everyone. Have a great day.